To the Tuesday, March 24th work session of the City Council. Tonight, we're going to be discussing economic development strategies and guiding principles. So we will turn time over to our City Manager, Gary Hill, for this item.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the City Council, we'll have you turn to page 3 of your packet. With any luck, we'll get this laptop. Lloyd, you want to see if you can assist, get this laptop to show what we're talking about on the big screen, too. But the information is in your packet. What I wanted to do tonight was, this is sort of the next step to make sure that the strategies we begin talking about for economic development match what your intentions are. So, as I mentioned previously in the last meeting, we took your comments and put them into a purpose statement and guiding principles. So would like to start with the purpose statement, which I'll just read briefly and see how closely this aligns to why economic development is important to you all. Economic development ensures the city has the stable and sufficient revenue needed to provide high-quality public services. By strengthening the local economy, it also expands the range of businesses and amenities available to residents, enhances community vitality and livability, and supports the long-term success of local businesses. So, Council, that would be the first question is, looking at the components of that purpose statement, how close are we to capturing the feelings that you had about why economic development is important?
Any feedback?
I'm pondering.
Pondering, okay. While you're pondering, I have a thought. I like everything that is in here as a purpose statement so far. One of the elements that I'm not sure exactly how to fit, so this is kind of a tossing it out for consideration, is how do we include somehow in this purpose statement kind of an iterative process where we're thinking about how we kind of audit ourselves and streamline ourselves so that we're always looking, so the economic development feels like it's not a static thing, but a journey where we're constantly looking to evaluate and refresh and make it this iterative process. So I don't have a great draft idea of where it might fit, but just that it seems like as part of the purpose, it ought to be that we're constantly kind of examining so that it doesn't feel like we've set an economic purpose statement and never intend to continue to think about how economies change and evolve and the needs that we have for how it provides revenue and stability and jobs to our community may also change and evolve.
What do you think about adding a statement along those lines to the guiding principles?
It's possible it could go there. But just that idea that I don't want it to feel like it's stayed and not going to be something where we're constantly looking for that.
Thank you.
That iterative part of always seeking to improve our economic outlook and attention.
I'm just going to go up there since that's where my... And I think this, if I remember right, Mayor, this kind of goes back to a comment you made at the retreat about the changing nature of sales and purchasing, right? Is that what you're kind of thinking about? Like the fact that, 15 years ago, we did not have the kind of home delivery system that we all rely on now with Amazon.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if we think about Bountiful's original foundings as an agricultural community, and a place that had many orchards and celebrated cantaloupes, and that's not necessarily what we do today. And 20 or 30 years ago, we weren't thinking about the way that online sales would change our sales tax base and the face of retail. So how do we build in something to our purpose statement or the guiding principles? It could go in either place to make sure that we're we're always in a kind of a constant evaluation and improvement of making sure that we don't get left behind from an economic standpoint.
Okay, great. Well, what happened? I don't know why my presentation disappeared. I just put it back on presentation mode, but maybe that's why. That's weird. All right, so I'm not going to be able to edit on the fly, it looks like, so.
Gary, I think I'm ready to share my ponderings, which I'm still pondering, but I like this statement. And I'll tell you what I've been rolling around in my head. When we did that session, we talked a lot about the why. Why would we all want this? And one of mine was to have high-quality services at lower, keep taxes low, property taxes, and not have to increase those. And you say
and you
that.
were talking, just to clarify, you were talking about city services, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
And I think you say it in there in a different way, because you're talking about high quality, you have no sufficient revenue. And I'm trying to decide in my own mind, does it need to be more explicitly stated, anything about, you're wanting services and you're wanting revenues, but you're not trying to do it on the back of the taxpayers. There's revenue here, you're talking about that. But I think, I'm trying to decide down below, you do talk about broadening the tax base on the principles. So that's what I'm rolling around in my mind, trying to decide, does it need to be more direct? But I'm not sure I feel so strongly that I would say, yes, it's got to change. But that's what I'm wondering.
Could you maybe expand more on that? I just want to make sure I'm tracking your idea on the balance
so when
of
we got
of
together, I mean,
services.
we threw out just ideas that we always want more services as the citizens do, but they don't want to pay for more. And really, so that became more economic development, more dollars that come through sales tax. And so I'm wondering, when I look at this, is that clear enough in there that that's one of the purposes of economic development? That's really what we're trying, one of the things we're trying to do. It's not all. So that's kind of where I'm going. Does that make more sense, or?
Yeah, I think that's
More
helpful.
clear,
I think it's helpful to me, and I'm sure as the person who has to capture and coalesce the ideas into action items, the more we can flesh it out, the better.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
And if I'm not loud enough, Gary, tell me I'm not loud
Okay,
enough.
I can hear you.
Okay, all right.
So can I answer your first question now? Is that okay, Mayor? I
would be
feel
great.
pretty good about that purpose statement. I think that it pretty well reflects the discussion we had.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My thoughts were the same. I think it's well done. If you can see, I've English teacher marked it up here. I like it.
I want to see.
It's nice that she used a green pen and not a red pen.
And we're,
It could
It's not
definitely
red
use
pen.
some
Not bleeding.
polishing.
Yeah. I like it. I think if you want any suggestions on the mayor and Dan's suggestions, you could add the word ongoing before economic development. Ongoing economic development ensures. And then, let's see, needed to provide high-quality public services. I don't know if it encompasses all that Dan is thinking, but you could say fund and provide high-quality public services. Those are my thoughts, my keep it succinct thoughts, but I really like the statement.
Would you be willing to give me your English corrections too?
Yeah, you bet.
and I like what Beth said. I do like that, both of those, yeah. And that would, I'm sure, address what I was talking about.
Mayor, can I ask a clarifying question of Councilmember Bell?
Yeah,
You may.
So would putting a phrase at the end of that first sentence, like without increasing taxes on residents, something, I mean, is that the idea? that you
that's the
want to convey
idea.
there?
I mean, it's really trying to be really clear that we're really trying to do that.
Yeah.
You know. I just
So,
don't think we can ever lose
I'm
sight
gonna
of that.
jump down-
And maybe it's stated a different way,
Jump
but
down to the guiding principles for
Yeah.
just a minute. That second bullet point was trying to get at this idea that that sales tax generation, why that part of our tax base is so important is because it offsets the need for more property taxes. I haven't articulated it great here, but I don't know if that helps clarify or if that's getting at what you're talking about, Dan. Happy to.
It is that thought. I don't think it's expanded as well as I would think it should be, and if it is in the guiding principles, because when I read it, I focus on existing businesses and the existing tax base, right, versus really what we're trying to do with economic development. But I do kind of like it up, and I could go either way, but I do like it up in the purpose statement, just that it's really clear. We never lose sight of that, but that's just.
Can I ask you a question? So I think there's lots of value to the protecting the existing sales tax base and businesses, but I think you're also focused on the expansion.
Absolutely.
The expansion and the growth of bases too, and I think that's part of where my concerns on wanting to make sure that we have a constant evaluation, iterative process of if we just protected buggy whips, we'd only have buggy whips. How do we constantly value what we have and continue to grow, diversify, so that we're not stuck when it turns out nobody wants a buggy whip anymore? So maybe as we're thinking about how we might have edits and suggestions around the guiding principles, that protecting the city's existing tax base and businesses is a really good guiding principle, but maybe there's a bullet point that's at an equal level, not a sub-bullet point, about growth and diversity and, continuing to challenge ourselves to think about additional opportunities in the economic development space so we're not left behind.
And I like how you've highlighted in here, Gary, that existing tax base. I mean, it's just so obviously so critical. It's a given, but it's important to be always aware because it's there and means so much to the city. And I like to think of the future.
I'm just writing notes here, but yes, talking about expanding the so two components, right? We need to protect what we have, but we need to, on a regular basis, we need to consistently and regularly evaluate opportunities to expand.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Like find a home for Joy Luck in Bountiful.
Yeah.
Hey, what an interesting case study.
It's great. We
So-
can move it from Woods Cross.
Yeah.
Just closing down.
So I'm just writing these under the guiding principles, and I'm sorry that I must have some strange setting on my new laptop that is making it so it only shows up when I have it in presentation mode. Why
I'm
don't
sure
we-
it's an Android issue.
Yeah, probably.
Sorry, I couldn't, you went
I know,
there.
I know. We can't talk about technology without me getting
You
dug
beat
in
me
the
to it,
ribs.
though. I was heading that direction, thinking about it.
So let's talk about some of these more specific guiding principles if we can. And these aren't listed in order of importance or anything, they're just listed. But building on Bountiful's unique identity, there are attributes of our community that don't exist. One of them we've talked about is that we're probably the only city in the county that has a main street that's not a state highway too, and therefore has still opportunities as kind of viable. Any concerns with that idea or expansion on that?
Maybe we'll signal with thumbs up. Everyone like that one?
Okay, great.
We're gonna borrow from our general plan process.
Yeah, this is good. We've already talked about protecting the city's existing tax base and businesses. And then to make equal to that, kind of looking down at the bottom, that we also need to regularly review and expand our tax base. so we're not left behind. Emphasizing that sales tax generation helps offset the need for other taxes and burdens on residents. And the intent of that is that, I guess this is what I'm thinking when I put that up there, is that one of the conversations we all had at the retreat was that it really, when we're talking about economic development, we're really talking about expanding our sales tax base. There's not a lot we can do to expand our property tax base. And the reason we want to expand our sales tax base is because that revenue keeps us from having to use our property tax. Does that capture kind of the feelings of the council from the retreat?
I think that captures it, and I would add one additional supplement. Some of the things that generate sales tax are also amenities and services that our residents, seem to want. And so whether they're, dining options or entertainment options, those both seem to fit in that sales tax base. And our residents are going other places for those things, which, we've noticed from our sales tax leakage study, from the general plan. So they're low-hanging fruit to capture, but it's both the help us keep property tax low for services, but then it's just the things that you pay sales tax on are sometimes the amenities they want and that they're going to pay for somewhere else if we don't help provide it.
Okay, good. Can include that.
I love how you state that actually in the purpose statement, but I like the idea of having that on the guiding principles, because it is, you say it expands the range of businesses and amenities available to residents. And it should be a guiding principle too, of some sort, because it's, yeah.
Gary, excuse me, I just want to confirm that the guiding principles we're talking about are the ones that you're projecting, not.
They're basically the same. They're
basically
slightly
the same.
reworded
Just
in
because
this.
RDA wasn't mentioned in the guiding principles in our packet.
Right.
But I
I'm
think
going to
that's
bring this back up
important,
so you
so I
can
just want to make sure that we're
see what we're talking about.
going off of what's projected, correct? more
Yeah,
or
I
less.
tried to, in this, what I'm showing is enhance a little bit what was put in the staff
Okay.
report. So on this idea, this number 4 bullet point, what Councilmember Segura Bar is referring to is leverage city resources such as RDA funds to encourage private investment. There's probably a better way to articulate that. The concept is that you can take city resources and directly invest them in a business, or you can take them and invest them in such a way that they encourage private businesses to invest in the city too. And it seems like that's where we would get our biggest bang for our buck is not like direct benefits to businesses, but putting it in things such as infrastructure that encourage the private sector to build itself.
I
Sure.
don't know that excuse me.
No, I was just going to say, another example might be our RAP tax funds where we're leveraging for public art or to build a town square. So there's things that if we build it, people will want to be adjacent to those types of things.
Yeah, I agree. I just don't know that I'm thrilled with the word leverage.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm thrilled with it either. I first had use, and then my friend Chat suggested that leverage might be.
Could we just say make city resources available?
What if it's a strategic alignment, right? Because it's about, we only have so many resources. It's the strategy of how we're effectively deploying them.
Yeah, deploying city resources.
Deploying city resources, I like.
But I get the concept. That's a better.
I agree.
That's a better concept.
And I agree, Mayor, in making it more targeted. Oh, it's gone again.
It'll come back. Sorry.
When he leaves presentation mode to go to note mode, the screens go off.
The whole system was probably built for Apple products, and that's why it doesn't work well with anything else.
That's exactly the reason why. Maybe that's a strategic initiative.
All in all, I'm very happy with how it's all come together and how you were able to combine everyone's thoughts. Did Councilman Murray have any thoughts that,
He did send me some in advance.
oh, he did?
Since he wasn't going to be able to be with us tonight or able to
I know
join,
he's pretty excited about,
join remotely. And his challenge was, as he said in his note, that he wasn't sure where the discussion would go. And some of what he's sent, I'll just share it, but some of it probably isn't necessarily fitting in guiding principles. His note talks about the need for a full-time emphasis on economic development, that he feels strongly about that, someone that, as he says, eats and sleeps bountiful as a priority. He lists permit streamlining and making it easy to do business in Bountiful as being a priority. A focus on retention and what he's coined as the sales tax titans, and making sure that those entities feel supported, because to lose a titan would be impactful. The person who eats and sleeps all the economic things would have a mastery of data, and then he is interested in a discussion of kind of node strategy for key nodes with kind of mini strategic plans for, and he lists some ideas like the hospital zone or 5 Points or the square. So some of them don't seem like they fit in guiding principles, but since he took the time to share.
But our strategies, that's sort of the next layer, right, that we're going to get to.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, he did take the time to want to make sure that he sent some thoughts over.
Some of the other concepts here, redeveloping underused properties, maybe it's really more of a focus on underused properties to be redeveloped. The concept is you start there, we look for those areas. Protecting and enhancing Main Street seem to be an important priority. And then that third from last bullet, the last two are additions we've made as we've talked. Invest in infrastructure that promotes access to businesses. Again, not terribly well worded. The idea is that we need to make it easy for people to get to businesses. So we need to have roads that lead people there. We need to have signage and perhaps landmarks like we've talked about for Main Street that invite people to Main Street. We need to have sidewalks and facilities that accommodate people. We need to have parking that's near businesses, things like that. That's the kind of infrastructure I'm talking about.
Hey, Gary, do you have an example that you're thinking about when you say redevelop underused properties, something that we've done that you feel like qualifies for what we've done in the past?
I think what we're trying to do currently with the Alpha Graphics area is a good example of that. When the opportunity became available, we decided to take that and adjacent properties and see if we can find a use for Main Street that's more consistent and more vibrant than what currently existed. Another example might be to just keep our eye on some of the other properties around town that might have less desirable uses, and consider land use changes or zoning that we could put into effect that would be more consistent with your general plan vision.
Yeah, thank you.
would we ever have to go through these guiding principles to define, like, what do we qualify as an underused property?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the next step?
I think we could take that to the next step,
Okay.
because there probably are different definitions for what underused means.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to think of some that are on Main Street, I think, as we've talked about, retail uses was something, it generates sales tax, it can be vibrant, like that's something we would generally accept. The White House was a great retailer, a clothing retailer for a long time, and evolved to a school, and now it's evolved to the Twig Library, and which is a temporary use. The use as a private school limits other uses around it from, a restaurant perspective, for instance. So is it underused as a private school versus other locations that might exist in the city for that use? Whereas we only have, one Main Street, and we have the historic section that is only from, 5th South to 4th North.
So underused might not be the best term, but it sounds like maybe more what we're really talking about is redeveloping in a way that is consistent with your general plan vision, and looking for properties that sort of are the low-hanging fruit that would allow us to do that.
Maybe it's an alignment, rather than an underused, it's
Yeah.
a realignment. Because a school is an important use that ought to exist throughout the city.
I'm
But
just gonna
not
write
necessarily in those, that 8-block stretch.
I fear, I'm going to get into the weeds a little bit here, but I'll just share what I'm thinking about. I like this idea of redevelop underused properties with the idea to respect the private sector. It's one thing to aid the private sector, it's another to compete with the private sector and in things we do. And I think that always has to be a guiding principle, recognizing the private sector, we can do things to help, but we shouldn't be competing with the private sector. And so I know that's a challenge. In fact, I find it harder sitting in this seat than before I was on the seat. But it is a principle that's important, that somehow we need to, and it's a little bit a fine line probably.
Yeah, look, let's talk about that a little bit more, because that's the first time this one has come up in this setting. But historically, the council has been very conscious of trying to not provide services for which could be provided by the private sector. One of those, for example, was one of those decisions was how we use City Hall. We didn't want to take business away necessarily from people that are trying to have reception centers, is an example of that. So what is the council's thought about, along the lines that Councilmember Bell said, about of having a guiding principle that avoids competing with the private sector?
It's an interesting one that I think is worthy of some additional discussion. And I've thought about like our work with Lucky Slice, where we're not owning and running a pizza parlor, but we did provide some strategic investment to take a building that did not have the amenities and facilities that a restaurant would have to help be the catalyst to bring a use that we wanted to prove out a test case of whether the vision we think we have for Main Street can really exist. So when are you a catalyst to a first mover, and when are you a competitor to business? And that, to me, is like a really good discussion to have, but it probably isn't one that we can finish in tonight's time for the work session.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right on. And I was thinking about that as one of them, trying to recognize why that was done. But it probably bears some more discussion at some point, is I guess what I would say.
Yeah, I made myself a note here that we can talk about that. Avoid competing with the private sector is just a placeholder for now.
So Gary, what do you think of in terms of the process to continue this discussion? Obviously, it was an important one for the council from our planning retreat and wanting to continue having it. Do we want to treat this somewhat like we did our not as long as the general plan process, but where we use available work sessions over the next several council meetings to continue to kind of flesh this out and have the discussion?
Mm-hmm. That's kind of what I had in mind, was that once we got this, the guiding principles, and to a place where we're comfortable, we could start identifying the areas of focus and strategies. And we would just sort of keep chipping away at this on a regular